Hello, welcome to a slightly unusual Instruō video. This is a module announcement, but it's a recreation of an old one. So this is the original here, which is the tràigh transistor ladder low pass filter. So this is the second module that I did as Instruō. You see this one's brass panelled. So this is the actual original that was in the time-lapse video that I did back in 2016, 2015 maybe. Yeah, it did get a production release following that, so there was a batch produced of the black and gold panel ones. This particular build, it uses a now obsolete matched transistor IC, which I think it was announced as being discontinued when I was designing this. So I think I might have bought the last stock that remained at Mouser way back when, so I could actually build these. The filter circuit itself I've actually revisited before, so it's the same circuit that's in the arbhar low pass filter from a couple of years back. So that version doesn't use the IC, it uses a series of matched transistor pairs, discrete transistors. So with this tràigh, I've used that part and basically gone back to the larger form factor of big knobs, 3-channel mixer, a bit more basic, doesn't have all the button combos and buried features of the arbhar, but it's a very playable filter. Slightly different character to the original just because of those different transistors, but yeah, I've been having a lot of fun patching with it. So yeah, a couple of extra quirks up its sleeve. So you can see the faders actually respond to the amplitude. I've designed them so they have an audio tapered response as well, so it feels really nice to work with mixing signals dynamically. You can see I've actually got signal on 2 unpatched channels here. So between channels 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, there are some additions which are frequency dividers. So here I've actually just got a Wavefolder source coming from this toner, and that is being subdivided to a square wave, which is then further being subdivided to another square wave. So 2 levels of sub-octave that can be derived. So using Wavefolder here, I'm getting some weird different overtones and subharmonics. Yeah, it's ended up being quite a fun addition that allows for some really interesting voice expansion. Yeah, so visually the module has some new artwork. This is featuring a little graphic of Winston, who is, as usual, right behind me here. Sound asleep. No, you're awake. Hello. Good boy. Yeah, so this module exists entirely because of Winston, because unfortunately a few months ago I've got some bad news of some health issues that he's got going on at the moment. So yeah, he's doing well. We're currently right at the halfway point through a round of radiotherapy treatment with him. But yeah, this is a project that I came up with and I've just been tapping away at over the past couple of weekends. So all the revenue from this limited run of Winston tráighs is going to be helping cover some unexpected medical bills for him. Yeah, it's a project that I felt that it was something that I could do proactively to try and combat this. And yeah, it's ended up being a helpful distraction, but something that's hopefully going to be proactive in the situation. Yeah, so as well as it being a limited run of modules that I'm going to be selling direct, I also documented the whole process of redrawing the circuitry, drawing the new boards. So I'm going to be publishing these as well as a bit of a long form behind the scenes of kind of a tutorial on KiCad and circuit design. Yeah, I'm just trying to flesh it out and make it a more interesting package of quirky product. yeah, so these are going to be a limited batch. I'm going to be building them myself over the next few weekends, and I'll put all the details in the description below. So this will be sold through it's an Etsy store that I'm going to be managing myself. But yeah, the crew at Signal Sounds have been extremely helpful and generous, so they're going to be helping me with the distribution and stuff like that. So it's yeah, I won't be going to the post office myself several times a week. But yeah, I'm going to unpatch this and start doing some tutorials. So I'll go through a few sound examples of what this filter can do. So hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. So the tràigh is a transistor ladder low-pass filter with a built-in 3-channel mixer, with some other quirks built in for this iteration. So I'm going to start simple, and I'm just going to patch up a sawtooth wave into the filter, and we'll just hear a very vanilla example of it, and then I'll build up a patch around that. So what I'll also do, I'll take the triangle wave from this toner, and I'm going to clock my scope so that we can see the output waveform from the filter. Static, there we go. Cutoff frequency, coarse and fine. Resonance, 3-channel mixer, and output level. So the input mixer, it's got quite a lot of gain available, so you can really drive whatever your input signals are into the transistors, which saturates really nicely. No, it looks like there's a bit of hard clipping on the bottom, but I think it's just the nature of the asymmetrical distortion. So with gain staging, you can get a really nice balance of how much saturation you might want in a voice. Cool. So I've actually got this patched up through an arbhar running as a parallel effect in its cycling grain delay mode. So bringing a little bit of that. Yeah, that's fun. Cool. So a lot of the times with subtractive patching, you get a lot more body to sound by doubling up or even tripling up your input source. That's why up to 3-channel mixer on the input, quite a typical approach for subtractive synthesis. I'll jump over to my crewing as a quick example of how subtractive sounds with more than one sawtooth wave. So in this case, it's mimicking 6 sawtooth waves. So if I bring up depth of modulation, bring up my rate, just drive a little bit more. That sounds pretty full. Bring in some grain delay again. So yeah, subtractive synthesis doesn't need a lot to sound really, really powerful. I'm going to go back to just a single static sawtooth, and let's try doubling this by just adding in square wave from a secondary oscillator. So this is where the multi-channel mixer comes in. Turn that to unison. So now I have a mix of sawtooth from this toner and square wave from this nyoni. So what I'll do a lot when I'm patching subtractively like this is I'll change registers of octaves or perfect fifths between different oscillators. So I'll tune my nyoni down an octave below. Just adding in that subharmonic essentially. Sounds pretty nice. Cool, so that's kind of my go-to subtractive voice in a lot of instances, is a sawtooth with a sub-octave square wave. So I came up with a solution to do that by skipping a step. So what I've added to this tràigh is a pair of CMOS flip-flop frequency dividers, similar to clock divider circuits, but these can run up at audio rate. So it means if I have a signal going into my input 1, it's going to my mix channel, which I can control level of. That signal branches off and goes through this frequency divider, which normals to channel 2. So if I bring this up, I've naturally got a sub-square wave derived from this raw sawtooth. And this being a new audio signal to channel 2, that cascades to a second frequency divider, so I can actually get a sub-square of that. So I've got my original sawtooth, sub-square, sub-sub-square. Yeah, very quickly gets very full as a voice. So I've got a pair of tràighs in here. I'm going to come back to this one later on in this video, but this one is behaving as I intended, design-wise, with this subharmonic generator. But I patched it up originally on the house system, just using a tine as a frequency divider, and just mixing it in manually as part of the patch. So this being built in, there are a couple of extra quirks that I didn't think about until I started patching with this, the first prototypes of this this new tràigh. The first one of this was using a Wavefolder as my primary voice. So that's a slightly low-pass filtered Wavefolder. So because this frequency divider is derived from zero crossing, so it's any time the signal goes to 0 or below 0, that's what clocks the divider. So it means that every time this signal drops below 0, that's where it's changing the state of the sub-generator. So if this is a wavefolded signal, it means that we can get a lot more zero crossings than a more basic waveform. So you get all this additional harmonic content that does jump whenever you reach a zero crossing. It's almost like hard sync ratios with elements of pulse width modulation. And of course the sub-sub derives a new signal from that as well. Yeah, things get really metallic sounding, especially when we mix in the original. So we get this huge spread of harmonic content. Yeah, pretty fun. So let's give this a little bit more dynamic. I'm going to add a slow LFO. just getting some slow evolution to these subharmonics. But it's all harmonic related. Yeah, it's interesting. Let's turn this into more of a melody. I'm going to clock a sample and hold and undersample another LFO. Quantize that, and here we should have a bit of an evolving melody. Back to just sawtooth wave for this. So you can see I've got a sequencer in here. I'm not actually using that over pitch because I'm using this sample and hold. So let's double up and use this not to sequence pitch but to sequence sequencer cutoff. Branch the clock out and let's get a bit of articulation per note. So this is an envelope that I'm adding into my FM input on the tràigh. This is all coming from just a single sawtooth wave from this toner into channel 1 of the tràigh. So a lot of body and depth to a single voice that otherwise you would have needed some other frequency divider into the mix. So it's now built into the tràigh. Okay, let's explore this second tràigh that I've got in this rack. This is a quirk that was quite an unexpected one. The one on the left here that I've just demonstrated with, it's behaving exactly as I intended with the design, with the way that the frequency dividers cascade and generate subharmonics and subsquares. This one works in certain instances, doesn't in others, but adds a little bit of interest, I think. So I'll patch up quickly using the same setup I had initially. Sawtooth wave from this toner. I'll clock the scope from a hidden triangle, and let's view this. Okay, so that's as expected. It's a clean, resonant, low-pass filtered sawtooth wave. And if I bring up this channel, we have the intended sub-square and then sub-square of that, so sub and sub-sub. So this was where I was, doing the initial benchmark tests of the circuit when I built the prototype. I was like, cool, that's working. Works perfectly from a square wave as well. But then what I discovered was a bit of an unexpected character trait depending on what waveform you're using. So when this first showed itself, it was the first instance of trying the circuit with a triangle core based oscillator versus a sawtooth core based oscillator. So tone of sawtooth works perfectly as expected. I'm going to jump over to the Nyoni. I'll clock from the square wave and let's put the sawtooth wave in. So on its own, that seems fine. I'll do one extra step actually. Let's run the sawtooth wave through the scope. I'll hide my green channel. So sawtooth cores, they generate the linear ramp natively and you wave shape the other waveforms from that. The Nyoni being a triangle core, the sawtooth is derived from the triangle, so it means that there's always going to be a seam in that fold point where it's rectifying and inverting the second half of the circuit. So we can just see that just a bit on the scope. You can see there's a little bit of an artifact of that fold point. With the Nyoni, I can actually shift through and use this as a twice frequency sawtooth wave generator. The seam, it pushes a little bit past when we go to the full clockwise extreme. Strangely enough, this one actually behaves perfectly. But if I change it to being this version where there is an artifact, that artifact's dropping below 0 enough to cause the frequency divider to flip. So it means, if I bring this up, we get this glitching, which it's almost like, to me it sounds like sort of 8-bit era Game Boy noise effect, which makes sense because they'd use like just sort of square waves and pulses to generate rumbles and noise. So it sounds like a Game Boy explosion sound. Even more so when you bring up the sub-sub. So yeah, not as intended and sounds a little bit off, but I found that there are some quite interesting side effects of this. Strangely, it's frequency dependent, so it must be above a certain frequency and it's not quite triggering the flip-flop. So, behaves fine above a certain frequency and with square waves, but otherwise it would need to be a sawtooth-based sawtooth wave, that makes sense, to get the intended effect. Where it gets fun, I did some experimenting with different waveforms. Let's go with a triangle wave here. I think because triangle waves they don't have a hard edge. So square wave, that's got that really clear descending hard edge, same with the sawtooth wave. Triangle waves, they're linear ramps. So there's a weird side effect that I think this is a combination of the input signal coming in, mixing at this mixer stage, and branching off to the flip-flop, where we're getting a sort of soft sync effect where it's giving sub-overtones. So it's kind of stepping up almost in an inverse harmonic overtone series, which of course affects the sub-sub. So it's more than just a sub-square generator, it's a sub-overtone generator, which gets quite interesting. Does the same thing pretty much with the sine wave as well. I think it's actually more pronounced with the sine wave. There's not even a point or corner. Sine waves are very soft, so it's almost like a harmoniser. Where I found it has the most prominent differences if I go to my Wavefolder circuit signal. Let's visualize the filtered version again. delay off. Okay, so this is my kind of direct channel 1 signal. We get these unstable distortions when it flips ratio. Sounds almost like digital ratcheting, like you would get the looper when you capture something in. It's fascinating because it's not just the wavefold depth that's affecting these jumps, but the level of channel 2 and 3. So for contrast, let me match these positions on this other tràigh. So this is the working tràigh. It's much more static. So yeah, much more stable, which fundamentally is a good thing, but I don't know, I kind of like this, so that's why I've kept one unmodified, because I think we're going to use this in a patch somewhere. Winston. Yeah, pretty fun. So because this is not a typical Instruō release, I'm doing this as a limited edition, limited run, selling direct, you know, same way that I did back in 2016 when it was just me operating out the spare room. Yeah, I guess I'll be building these, you know, over the next few weekends, and making modification to correct it so the flip-flop behaves as it should. But I think I might set aside a small quantity that are unfixed, because if anyone that's interested in one of these modules wants to try out the weird unstable one, then yeah, let me know, and I'll keep a small batch that are a little bit more quirky than just the quirky one. Yeah, that's analog circuitry. It gets unpredictable and leads things musically in unexpected directions. Thanks for watching.